Those missiles, mainly aboard British and French submarines, are not part of the bilateral arms bargaining underway in Geneva between the United States and the Soviet Union. Unless the limitation of space weapons is included in the negotiations, the peace talks could only collapse. On the local scene today, another party of bushwalkers has gone missing in the Highlands. We cross to Steve Roberts for this report.
On Friday morning, Paul Johnson, a Melbourne businessman, led his wife, their teenage daughter and 10-year-old son into here. Although the sky was clear when they left, the weather closed in suddenly over the weekend, probably catching them unprepared. A full-scale search and rescue operation has been organised. Members of the search party come from bushwalking clubs, the State Emergency Service and the police. All search groups are coordinated from this base and radio communications are maintained from here.
You know how the party is and grid reference, please.
Righto, well, I'll call you in an hour's time.
In an hour.
And every hour thereafter.
Right. Okay, good. Take it away.
Right, could we move out, please, now? That's right.
Paul Johnson's parents raised the alarm when the family failed to return as planned.
Paul did quite a bit of bushwalking when he was young. Day walks in the bush. And he's pretty fit. But if he hasn't made allowance for the women and young Mark, they're going to be very cold. And if they're wet and the wind up there...
I don't think they took their raincoats. And Mark was only wearing shorts.
We're about halfway up the ridge below North Lake. Weather conditions are very bad. Wind and snow. Pretty slow going.
I spoke to Sergeant Taylor of Police Search and Rescue, who's in charge of the operation here.
Our job's made tougher by not knowing which route the Johnsons took. We try to encourage all bushwalkers to leave written trip details with friends or with us. If we know things like their routes and destination, the names and ages of the party, and their estimated return time, then if an emergency occurs, help can be provided that much sooner. In the Johnsons' case, all we know is that they are somewhere in there.
Poor visibility has so far prevented an air search. With rain and low temperatures forecast, concern is now held for the Johnsons and their children. It's now a race against time and weather for the Johnsons. With snow falling overnight and blizzard conditions in the Highlands, the chances of survival up high would be slim.
Right, when we get up through these trees, we'll spread out and do a line search, please.
Extra volunteers and police have joined the search this morning, and you can see how well they need to equip themselves to survive these conditions.
Right, could you spread out in line search, please? About 10 metres apart along the creek bed. And Ray, could you take the end of the line, please? Move out when we're in position.
We'll keep you up to date as the search progresses, but meanwhile, we'll cross back to Maggie in the studio for today's rather appropriate cover story.
Australia is considered the driest continent in the world. So it comes as some surprise to find that more of our bushwalkers succumb to wet and cold than to heat. Last year in this area alone, more than 50 searches were conducted. Fortunately, most survived to bushwalk another day, but others die of exhaustion or hypothermia or just simply disappear, never to be seen again. My guests this morning are Inspector Grant from Police Search and Rescue and Peter Jackman, President of the Bushwalkers Club. Peter, is bushwalking then a dangerous hobby?
Bushwalking is like any other sport, Maggie. You need to be physically and mentally prepared before you start. To race motorbikes without a helmet would be to invite trouble. To go bushwalking in the highland regions of southeast Australia without the right clothing and equipment would be to court disaster.
What would you recommend then as an absolute minimum for an overnight walker?
Well, strong, comfortable boots with ankle supports are a must. Wear woolen socks. Wool retains the heat, cotton doesn't. And always carry a complete change of warm clothing. Woolen trousers, a woolen shirt, or fibre pile. And a waterproof coat. Must be at least 3/4 length and with a hood.
I believe you keep this nice and handy to save tipping everything out if it suddenly rains.
That's right, Maggie. When wind blows against wet clothing, body temperature is dramatically reduced.
Peter, what about equipment?
A good quality sleeping bag is essential. A map, compass, and a whistle. A knife. A notepad and pencil are pretty useful too. Food rations, with an extra day's supply just in case. A first aid kit, and a torch, obviously. A fuel stove, with fuel. Eating utensils and a billy. A plastic, bright-coloured ground sheet. A tent. And, of course, a pack to hold it all.
Well, that seems a lot to carry.
If you get into trouble, Maggie, it could seem precious little. And as you can see, it all fits easily into here.
Inspector Grant, in your experience, what are the main dangers waiting to trap the inexperienced bushwalker?
Maggie, we find that many newcomers just don't understand how changeable the weather conditions can be. Others overestimate their own ability. Getting wet, exposure to cold winds, and fatigue will all pull you down and can lead to death. Now, if you become lost or delayed and the weather turns nasty, find shelter, set up camp, and stay put.
Inspector Grant, Police Search and Rescue, and Peter Jackman, President of the Bushwalkers Club, thank you both for coming in.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity, Maggie.
Each day, the Johnsons' chances of survival diminish rapidly. Meanwhile, the search continues and the anxious relatives wait. The forecast: rain, wind, cold, all enemies of survival.
Fortunately, the weather has eased and an aerial search began early this morning.
Hi, what's my like a coffee?
Not for me.
Thank you
thanks.
very much.
No, thank you.
Okay, have something.
Oh,
Really good.
very well.
Search base, this is spotter plane. Search base, this is spotter plane. We are now flying over the forest area immediately south of North Lake. Nothing to report at this stage.
Sergeant Taylor, what are their chances?
Well, any survival under these conditions depends greatly on the leader of the party. Mr. Johnson has had some experience, so he should have registered his trip. That's the leader's first responsibility. Secondly, he should be aware of emergency procedures, providing us with some signal to help find them. And thirdly, he's responsible for the morale and well-being of the group. They're going to need every encouragement they can get right now. And he must allow for the weakest member, not the strongest or his own pace. We can only hope that Mr. Johnson has obeyed enough of the rules to keep his family alive.
Search base, it is spotter plane.
Search base, spotter, go ahead.
Roger, search base. We can see two people with a fire and a bright coloured ground sheet. Are you ready for a grid reference? Roger, go ahead. Roger, grid reference 692-235. Over.
Search base to spotter, that was grid reference 692-235, correct?
Roger, out.
Thank you.
up the track, maybe 15.
It's our son and daughter, you know.
Yes,
Looks
understood.
like problems with the at least one of the children in the family.
No idea of the injuries at all, the extent of
Not
them?
at this stage. We'll just have to wait till they come. Steady on. Come on. Excuse me. No, let's back. Come on over here. All over.
You're really good.
No, look, see, mustard. No one. Yes, but just keep it please. Righto.
6 weeks ago, 10-year-old Mark Johnson died on a weekend bushwalk. Today, the coroner concluded that Mark Johnson had died of hypothermia just hours before help arrived. In sport, the Australian soccer team, the Socceroos, notched up their 5th European win and seem likely to clinch the Grand Slam. Tim Mayotte used an effective serve and volley game last night to upset 5th-ranked Andre Gomez of Ecuador 7-6, 6-4, 6-2 in the opening match.